the Thunder Ranch AK blue collar style, or affordable style if you will. This is the VSKA from Century Arms in partnership with Thunder Ranch, built to Clint Smith's specs with some modifications that he requested. I've got this in for an article I'm working on, but I thought I'd give you guys a peek, and that's what's coming up next on GBGuns. You can't talk about this rifle. This is not the one I showed you in the intro scene. This is my other VSKA. We'll get to the Thunder Ranch in a second here. But you got to cover the VSKA first and why it might have been chosen. There is some incorrect, some misguided, and some outdated internet lore out there about the VSKA, the first completely US-made AK. And before people jump on the comments and rah rah rah, I've seen non-gunsmiths make the gun break, wanted to talk about my experience with the VSKA. For those of you that are literary, in Ballistic Magazine, this is the June-July of 2020 article. I went inside Century Arms, there's Graham Bates as the name there, and I saw how they build these things. The trip happened earlier on in 2020. It was a great experience, and one of the things that I talked to him about was some of the reports of early issues with VSKAs, and we went through the assembly line step by step by step, and I saw how they were built. This is not the first AK maker I've visited. I've visited some very famous ones here in the US and overseas, and the challenge with making an AK is it's somewhat based on craftsmanship, and that is somewhat of a lost art here in the US. You look at AR makers, and well, ARs are assembled. Everything's built within a certain spec. You slap it together, bam, you've got an AR, you're done. Which parts are chosen can affect a lot of things, but in general, it's assembly, not crafting. With the AK, you've got a barrel that has to be pressed into a trunnion that has to be pressed into a folded receiver. You've got these rivets that have to be pushed in at just the right depth and pressure, and there's a lot of room for error unless you've got a state-run factory with third-generation workers that's all they know and do in life. And that's where the legendary quality and reputation of the Eastern European, the former Soviet bloc AKs comes from. Here in the States, we didn't have that. So what did Century do? Well, by the time the VSKA came around, they had learned the lessons on some things, figured out some procedures, and what I saw, and it's outlined in that article, is every step has a check, and every step has been absolutely industrialized, if you will. There's a jig for everything, holding everything in place. They have a tool-making machine they use to make tools to do the stuff with. Every rivet is pressed in with a dedicated machine that is set at that pressure and checked. Head spacing is checked no less than 5 times, unless throughout assembly, if there are any changes need to be made, say the front sight post or gas block has to be straightened a little bit, then it gets checked again. And it's an incredibly professional, well done procedure that really takes the margin of error out of things. Even checking headspace, they devised a special tool for it that uses the same pressure every time, so it doesn't matter if you are a tired worker on a Friday afternoon or a vigorous James Yeager shoving that ball as far and hard forward as you can. It's not possible to over or underdo the correct amount of pressure to check headspace. So everything has been solid. This VSKA of ours that we've had for a couple of years has been 100% reliable with no issues. I have tuned it up a little bit, going with the American-made theme. Use an Ace Limited folding adapter and stock, an Ace Limited top cover here, and we usually have like our M7 or something on the front. And this has been one of our test guns. So from there, what did Thunder Ranch want to do? Well, the goal with this guy was to have a working man's defense rifle. The idea being, and I've spoken with Clint Smith and Thunder Ranch to verify all of this, the idea being to have a more affordable, readily available defense option that he could vouch for. So he mandated a whopping 4 parts changes on the whole gun. Comes with one of the new US Palm mags. You notice we've got the metal reinforcement front and rear, as any polymer mag attempting to serve well on an AK should. And our parts changes. We've got an A2 flash hider instead of the spoon or fork. Why? Well, this is a defensive gun, and AKs can be fire breathing, especially depending on the ammo you choose. This will help reduce the flash. In theory, I haven't shot this yet. The full review will be in an article. I'm probably going to take this down to Thunder Ranch since they're here in Oregon and run it there for myself to get some experience with it under training conditions, if you will. But flash hider to not blind yourself. We've got the piece of rail here. This is from RS Regulate off to the side to be able to mount a flashlight. Why do these two things go together? Well, because most defensive shooting tends to happen at night. Moving down, you can see that the safety has changed to one of these with the extended lever there. That, I think, is kind of a wise choice. Most folks aren't used to the finger sweep method of activating or deactivating the safety on an AK. Kind of takes some training and experience. And if this is meant to be a grab it and go defensive weapon, I mean, let's be honest, of the millions of gun owners out there, how many have actually been through any type of real AK training? Even some of your internet experts out there haven't taken an AK through a training course. And I ran AK-74s in 3-gun for a couple years, but it wasn't until I took my AK to front sight and then took an AK to center T that I got really proficient with activating this and other specifics to running an AK to its fullest. That's not to say it requires a lot of training to run the gun, period, but this helps eliminate things because you can activate it with your trigger finger very easily while still keeping your hand on the grip. The grip itself is a US Palm. It's red. The white balance is making it look kind of orange here in this footage. Hopefully it comes through more reddish on your screen. But the US Palm grip is great. It's comfy. It's a different angle. Red, why? Well, Marine Corps red because Clint is a Marine Corps veteran, and that's a great way of making this gun kind of pop. Whole bunch of AKs lined up in a row, all tend to blend very inconspicuously with one another on a gun store shelf. If those of you are watching this can remember when there were guns on shelves at stores, this will help make it pop. As far as the tactical choice of it being red, well, it's your grip. Your hand is there. And as a home defense, self-defense weapon, you're not trying to be camo, so not trying to be super cool there. We do have sling points. Of course, they're traditional here in the rear and up front. The rifle is intended to come with a sling. Mine did not. I'm sure that was a shipping mishap, and I'm waiting for that sling to arrive. But other than that, everything was kept as VSKA as it gets. So you still have the tool steel being used. You still have forged trunnions. All of those specs that make it a very smooth running, nicely built AK that is also American made, and I think that's pretty awesome. One other touch, of course, I've got to show since people would love it, is there is your branding for the Thunder Ranch. You can see it's laser etched and it's nice and clear, but it's not obnoxious, it's not standing out, it's not turning the gun into a billboard. It is simply an AK with the Thunder Ranch mark on it. I was curious as to why no optics. You know, one of the things about the VSKA that people either love or loathe is the lack of an optics mounting solution here. Now, with it being smoother, it's a slimmer rifle, it's not going to snag on you as much, a little more comfortable, also inspires you to keep the weight down. Could they have done something on the gas tube like we did on ours with the Ace Limited cover there? Yes, they could have. But why not? I asked Clint Smith that specifically, and he had a solid point. This is a defensive rifle at defensive ranges, especially if you're looking at within the house, etc. That optic is probably not really that important. The AK has functional iron sights that work, and at the speed and proximity that defense use happens, if you can't point shoot an AK, you probably shouldn't have a firearm to begin with. This is not meant to be a long-range precision setup. It's meant to be a defensive gun. So as far as putting an actual scope on here, kind of inappropriate. This is more of a go kit, if you will. If you look at all the handguns that are out there that people buy as something to have at the nightstand or something like that, this setup, including a sling and a quality magazine with the metal reinforcements there, is pretty complete. And without putting a rail on there, it's really helping to keep costs down. Now, the original cost goal of this rifle was not met. I don't think that's a production cost issue. That's 2020 happened issue. I mean, everything is priced abnormally high. So I think the goal was laid out well. I think the goal was met. I don't have any arguments against any of this. Having not shot it yet, we'll have to wait and see. But if it's anything like my other VSKA, and I have no reason to think it would be any different. I mean, those, you can read about it, like I said, if you pick up June, July 2020 issue of Ballistic, there's my full report of inside Century Arms, something you don't see out there very often. But the quality control standards that they have in place now lead me to believe that this VSKA will be exactly like my other VSKA, otherwise it would have never left the factory. So that's the faith I have in this setup and in Century Arms with how they have laid out their AK stuff. Let me know what your thoughts are on this thing. I mean, it's easy to sit back in a chair and keyboard commando it and be like, oh, it should have had an optics mount. Oh, it should have come with the flashlight. Oh, why the wood stocks, things like that. But as soon as you do that, the price starts going up. And with there already being plenty of, well, I mean, Thunder Ranch themselves already has a licensed higher end AK option, if you will, but not something that us working stiffs can afford. I mean, I own several AKs. I do not own any Rifle Dynamics AKs because to me, it's hard to justify the difference in cost. And this being 100% American made, I think also rings true. Very nice, no foreign parts being used in it. You don't get S7 tool steel being used that I know of in very many of the foreign made stuff. And the stampings, the rivets, I'll bring it in close for you guys to take a look and see depth there. They're all checked with each step of the process. And it's all very nicely done. And there aren't many AKs that come with American walnut on them either, which is kind of cool. Sure, furniture is easy to change. And this action, when you have that little bit of resistance as you're going over the hammer, which all AKs do, but otherwise very smooth. If you guys want to take a look inside, love the what do you guys think on top covers, ribbed versus unribbed? Sometimes I love the smoothness. It kind of reminds me of like a Vepr. Other times I think the ribbed ones look cool. There's our carrier. You can see we've got some lightning cuts in there. Why? Because when you're using a denser steel, the carrier is going to weigh more. All looks clean. You can tell it was test fired. And the camera can catch the angle. You can see we have a proper hook in there. Damn, that light's not going to get in there, is it? Because it does not have the stupid paper clip in to hold the pins in place. It's got an actual shepherd's crook piece to hold everything in. But very cleanly done. Nicely done as I've come to expect. I mean, I tell you what, Century, some would say rightly so. I don't know. I haven't experienced any failures, but there was a lot of hate out there for Century AKs in the beginning, and I think they learned their lesson and have come to make some much better guns. And just look, this is even going together nicely because everything fits as it should. So as far as the full report and what all is going to be in that full report, you're going to have to wait until the article comes out. There we go. It's always awkward to do on camera. If you guys are ever wondering, and for those who said, oh, you're muzzling yourself, the camera is at a 90-degree angle in front of me, pointing down, and I am looking at the screen on the camera, which is turned at 90 degrees to my eyes. So, manipulating guns on camera is sometimes a little tough. Anyways, that's a quick first look at the new Thunder Ranch VSKA. I think it's a good pairing. I'm looking forward to getting down to Thunder Ranch and running this through their course and getting a better understanding of the parts chosen and why. I have my own background, said, between 3-gunning, front sight, center T, and years of plinking, but to see what's chosen, it's a good fit, little front to rear, little side to side. Love that extended paddle, that nice broad paddle is very easy to grab, and no sharp edges, unlike some of the ones that are folded down here. You can kind of cut your thumb over time grabbing them. I know that's one of those things that's laughable, but try using one of those in a 4-day course and you will learn. I appreciate you guys watching. Let me know your thoughts on the Thunder Ranch VSKA, and we'll see you soon.